It's not unheard of for countries to experience railway scandals, but the one I'll be showing you in today's video is one of Europe's biggest. Introducing the IC4, one of Denmark's newest express trains, yet the most problematic. We'll be taking a ride on one today as we take a scenic journey across Denmark from Fredericia in Jylland to the country's capital Copenhagen. Now join me as the journey continues. Fredericia Station is the second station to have been built in the city, having opened in 1935 and being inaugurated at the same time as the Little Belt Bridge, which will be of importance later. The station was designed by the National Railway DSB's chief architect at the time, Knud Tengo, and was one of 4 operational railway stations in Denmark to have a railway station hall, which are rather uncommon in Scandinavia as a whole. That being said, the main concourse itself leaves very little to be desired. You'll of course find a 7-Eleven inside where you can also purchase tickets, as well as make use of several ticket machines to do so too. The waiting room here is also a useful place to hide from the cold, as well as sit down on some seats which, spoiler alert, we'll be seeing again shortly. On that note, we don't have that long to hang around here, as our train is the 1356 IC148 service to Østerport from platform 10. However, we'll be alighting a few stops before at Copenhagen Central Station. Access to the platforms is provided through the underground walkways here, which have rather cool looking murals on the wall. Does anyone know what they're for? Anyway, despite the station dating back to 1935, Fredericia has been an important railway junction in Denmark since the railways arrived in the city in 1866, being a key link not only to Aarhus, Aalborg and cities towards Copenhagen, but also towards the German border at Padborg and Flensburg. Services here are provided by the Danish State Railways, or DSB, primarily using the rubber-nosed IR4 electric multiple units and IC3 diesel multiple units, which have been the backbone of the Danish railway network for over 30 years. Trains split and join here at Fredericia to serve different destinations, such as the Intercity Lund or Express service I took from Copenhagen that split here to serve Aarhus and Sønderborg. Which brings me on to what was supposed to replace them. This is the IC4, which as the name suggests is a 4-car intercity diesel multiple unit. A total of 83 200km/h capable units were ordered by DSB in 2000, with the aim of entering service in 2003. However, severe technical issues and manufacturing delays resulted in their delay into service until 2007. The trains were built by Ansaldo Breda in Italy, the same manufacturer responsible for the Fira scandal in the Netherlands in 2013, and it's safe to say these units have been causing a fair amount of problems in Denmark too. But as we'll see later, these problems sadly haven't ended yet. One such problem was the lengthy certification process for running the sets in multiple, which our train is doing today, being formed of 2 4-coach units. I have to say I do like the front end design, being designed by Pininfarina, who are famous for designing Ferrari cars. DSB also ordered 23 similar 2-car IC2 units which entered service in 2012. However, these have since been withdrawn. There'll be more to say about what happened to them and the future of the IC4s later in the video. Anyway, our train's due to depart soon, so let's get on board. Level boarding is available on the IC4s on 1 carriage, the remaining 3 having a few steps to board. Disappointingly, first class on the IC4 is laid out in a 2x2 configuration consisting of table seating only. By the entrance is a stand with complimentary newspapers, funnily enough with the old DSB logo, as well as a stand with flasks, which I'll come back to later once we get going. For now, let's just take this table seat here. Our route today will first see us cross from Jylland into Funen, making calls up to Odense ahead of crossing the Great Belt Bridge into Zealand, where we make further stops up to Copenhagen Central Station where we'll alight. Our journey today is expected to take 2 hours and 14 minutes to cover a distance of 218 kilometers or 135 miles. We depart Fredericia on time at 13:56. Also notice the engine sound as we leave the station. Our IC4 is really struggling. The train manager stopped at the food stand with coffee, water and chocolate, which I took advantage of. This is included in first class and is the only form of catering on the entire train, unlike the IC3s, which are also fitted with vending machines. Not long after leaving Fredericia, it's now onto the main line and the Little Belt Bridge thereafter. This truss bridge opened in 1935 and was the first bridge in Denmark to cross the Little Belt Strait, and also the first part of road and rail connections between Denmark's three main islands, this being previously done solely by boats and ferries. After crossing the bridge, we arrive in the island of Funen and make our first stop at Middelfart almost immediately after. Note that even though this is an intercity service, there are a fair amount of stops en route to Copenhagen today, many of these being skipped by the faster intercity Lund or ICL services that IC4s can and do operate, though to a lesser extent than the IC3s. With that, let's now focus on the interior of first class on the IC4. For a modern train, the seats are actually pretty great. Decent padding at both the base and main frame, particularly with the slightly winged headrest and the plush cushion. Overall, very comfortable. At both the aisle side and the middle of the seat are foldable armrests, and below the seat are two standard 230V 2-pin power sockets between the seats. We can also see levers towards the window side to use the seat's manual recline. Just slide yourself forwards and backwards whilst pulling to operate it. As all seats here are table seats, the legroom's pretty decent given there's nobody opposite me at the moment, but this will of course be much tighter if it was busier. One thing I also noticed with the tables themselves is they can be easily flipped up from their supports. Makes the floors easier to clean, I suppose. The tables also contain a slot for magazines, which are a great read, provided you understand Danish of course. It will also be useful to know that the emergency hammer is located just next to the window. You know, just in case. Below the overhead luggage racks are buttons to not only operate the reading lights, but also an old entertainment system, which ironically fell out of use as the main rollout of the IC4 was continuing. Funnily enough, it seems it still works, but sadly I couldn't test it at this time. Finally, there's a draw-down window blind which merely reduces the outside glare. Not that there's much of that today. All in all, a fairly basic interior, but it's definitely more comfortable than you'd expect given this train's troubled past. A shame really, as it's quite good when all's in working order. As we continue to travel through the island of Funen, we reach close to 170 km per hour, which is close to the 180 km per hour maximum speed that IC4s are permitted to reach in Denmark. The ride quality is actually pretty great and relatively smooth. There is also fast free Wi-Fi on board the train, well, at least advertised. When I tried to connect, I couldn't find any available network, strangely enough, which is disappointing. Approaching Funen's largest city, Odense, we can see numerous IC4s either on standby or having been stood down to keep the rest of the fleet going. It's actually not uncommon to see examples of the latter all over Denmark, especially as the fleet's in the process of being retired, but more on that later. As well as being the island of Funen's largest city, Odense is also the third largest in the country as a whole, the main station serving it being a central hub on the island across Denmark. The Danish National Railway Museum is also located just adjacent to here, the largest of its kind in Scandinavia, though no time for a visit for me on this trip. Have you been before? The IC4 also did a complete reboot here and all the electronic displays started working again. However, that came at the cost of broken air conditioning, so safe to say it's going to be rather toasty in here continuing on to Copenhagen. Though it's worth reminding you that this is only one of a long list of problems experienced by the IC4 fleet. Since they were ordered, they have been the source of numerous problems on the Danish railway network, and even became a major political issue due to their prolonged delivery and additional expenses in fixing the numerous technical issues associated with them, and accommodating them on the Danish railway network, such as platform extensions. In the end, 82 of the 83 sets were actually delivered, and as for the 83rd, Ansaldo Breda and former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi gifted the last set to the Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi for his 40th anniversary of ascension to power in 2009, and it was converted to a luxury train for his personal use. However, DSB didn't actually discover the train was there until 2013, when the deliveries were supposedly complete. Libya doesn't actually have any operational railways, however, so it was placed on the 3 kilometers worth of track that was proposed to eventually link Tripoli with neighbouring Tunisia. These plans were subsequently shelved, and the train is still gathering dust in Libya. It can even still be seen from Google Earth if you enter the coordinates. Anyway, back to our journey in Denmark. We make our last stop in Funen of Nyborg, ahead of crossing the Great Belt Strait, which links the former island with Denmark's largest, most popular island, Zealand. If any of you from down under are watching, I know what you're thinking, and nope, that's not where New Zealand got its name from. The link carries both rail and road traffic, the former opening in 1997 and the latter in 1998, and is split into 2 sections. We're on the West Bridge, which takes us to the island of Sprø briefly before heading into the second section, the East Tunnel, which runs underneath the strait. The tunnel was designed specifically for rail traffic. Unlike the West Bridge, which has an 18-metre clearance, the East Bridge used by road traffic has a rather steep 65-metre clearance, which had the potential to cause safety issues and accidents, notably for freight trains. This also allowed for trains to reach higher speeds without being impacted by wind turbulence. The tunnel takes around 15 minutes to clear, and emerging from it sees us on the island of Zealand. To the right is the line to Rødby, which was previously used by trains that use the ferry between Germany and Denmark, though I'll have more to say about that in future videos on this channel. For now, we arrive into Ringsted, located around 60 kilometers or 37 miles away from Copenhagen, and where we pass a trio of IC4s on a service to Aarhus. Despite being designed for intercity work, most of the remaining IC4s nowadays only work a handful of intercity services like ours, and are primarily seen working DSB's regional services, which is a bit of a shame. They are comfortable trains despite their flaws. Anyway, as it's getting dark outside, let's do a walkthrough of the train. Second class on the IC4s is again laid out in a 2x2 configuration, albeit with a mixture of airline and table seats, and of course lacking the first class catering. The wheelchair accessible area is located lower than the main seating area and is accessed using stairs. This also includes bike storage, available for a small reservation of approximately 20 Danish kroner. There is also a small bistro area here it seems, but it wasn't in use. Was it ever in use before? Accompanying this area is a wheelchair accessible toilet, which, minus the wet stains on the floor, were fairly clean, and to my surprise working. The standard toilet is also surprisingly spacious and clean, though I did find it amusing that DSB make you sit down. You know, for safety's sake. The only official luggage storage available is the overhead racks for smaller items, but you can at least use the space between the seats for some larger items. We're now approaching the Copenhagen metropolitan area, which means our journey is coming to an end and it's time to reflect. Despite the many technical difficulties with these trains, their trouble past, and the fact I basically had a sauna session for an hour and a half, I don't think the IC4 is a complete failure, but stuff like this does ruin the overall passenger comfort and is a poor reflection on DSB, who I've otherwise had great experiences with on my visits to Denmark. Thankfully though, the future seems bright for DSB, as full electrification of Denmark's core railway routes in the coming years will allow the entire fleet of IC4s, alongside the rest of DSB's diesel fleet, to be replaced by 150 brand new IC5 Alstom Coradia Stream electric multiple units in 2027, which ironically are based on the NS versions that now provide the eventual links that the Ansaldo Breda Fira were built to serve. As with 15 of the former IC2s that were sold to Astra Transcarpatic, the remaining 74 IC4s will be joining them in Romania, the first 3 already in the country for homologation with their new owner Cardinal Main SRL. Hopefully they don't cause too many problems in their new home. I was travelling on a first class Interrail pass for this trip, and as reservations aren't compulsory for domestic trains in Denmark, I just hopped on board and took my seat. Prices between Fredericia and Copenhagen around a month in advance are 145 Danish kroner for second class and 598 Danish kroner for first class, so unless you fancy lounge access, quietness and the catering offering, I'd strongly recommend second class over first. Anyway, passing one of DSB's maintenance depots, we arrived shortly afterwards into Copenhagen Central Station with a small delay of 2 minutes. Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. Have you tried the DSB IC4 before? What did you think of it, and will you be glad to see the back of them as they're banished to Romania? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and share it if you did to aid the channel's growth, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. I'm off to check into the hotel now, but I'll leave you with a shot of our IC4 departing Copenhagen as it continues the short stretch to Østerport, which is ironically closer to the city centre. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.